Awesome. Welcome everyone to another B0 Contributor Hours. Um, Today we have it's ironic because the only topic that was submitted for this B0 Contributor Hour by Allison is actually something that we're gonna be we were gonna be talking about anyways, which is about the LeanPocket QA, PR, and PR process. I guess he was trying to say, like, what's the deployment process to production is gonna look like. So after internal discussions with the team, the B0 team has decided to change the format in which we were doing releases. We were doing releases based on projects, and when the projects were completed, we were doing releases. But now, with two proposals, almost code complete, and or entirely code complete, we thought that, and a third one coming. We are thinking that we have to change the way releases work. So moving forward, what's going to happen is that we are going to be implementing release windows. And what a release window is going to do is basically create a deadline far off in the future, from the immediate future to far off in the future, where contributions, both internally and externally, are going to be able to be submitted. And after that release window elapses, our team is going to handle the QA and the certification process and the beta process for releasing that version of the software. So what that's going to do is basically, first, it's going to take away the requirement from individual contributors to have to do their own QA, which bearing into consideration that this also is being timed with the release of the automated QA suite, which is going to be launching in August. So what we're going to do is the next two releases are probably still going to be manually tested for the next two release windows. We are thinking about alternating between major releases and minor releases in the future. So we're going to be able to, for example, if some other proposals carry on and they require consensus breaking changes, there will be already a release window for consensus breaking changes in the future, where those changes are going to be able to be submitted and reviewed as part of that release window. Of course, this comes with trade-offs, because what's going to end up happening is that what happens if the code is not ready, the QA design is not ready by the release window? For now, the answer is going to be it goes to the next release window, but we know it's a little bit more nuanced than that. So we're going to be testing the new format out and seeing what's going to happen. So I want to address the three individual projects based on the, well, I guess first, we need to talk about what are the immediate release windows. So what we want to do is be able to sit down and establish a release cadence, for example, for the next quarter, where we're going to have all of the releases empty, and then we're going to be adding issues to those releases, and you're going to be able to see what's coming in which release. Um, what we want to do with the next two is that we are doing a consensus breaking change in the form of the PIP22 changes that were voted in by the DAO, and that is going to be a consensus breaking change that is going to have also some other consensus breaking changes that were more internal to the roadmap in the form of Tendermint mempool improvements and some others. And then on top of that, we're going to have, and then afterwards, we're going to have a minor one. And the idea is that the PIP22 implementation, which is being done by Andy, and the LeanPocket light client release, and maybe even the RPC changes proposed by Jorge yesterday, are going to make it into that minor release that we're going to be doing. So the timelines that we're looking at to do this is to have we want to have QA of RC 0.9.0 happen next week. I'm working with Andy to get his contributions for PIP 22 ready and his QA design ready next week so we can execute QA over the entire release, including our own internal items that we've been working on internally. And then we're going to open another release window for in August, think mid to late August, to do a minor version release where we're going to be including a LeanPocket as well. The reason why we didn't want to do all of them in the same release, and the reason why we're not doing it right now, it's because there are some concerns over the QA design of LeanPocket, and we're in the early stages of working through those. So we're gonna be able to, I mean, concerns in the forms of complexity of testing. And so in order to ensure the smooth release of this consensus breaking change, what we want to do is separate the two. In the future, if they're ready, and we're gonna be able to do that. But because this is the first run, we want to make sure that everything goes out smoothly. Um, and so, for example, if Jorge were to finish his code and test and QA design in time for the window in August for the next minor version release, then he would be including those changes in there, and they will be all QA, hopefully with the new automated QA suite. And so we will only need to do manual testing of the new changes and so on. So that was a lot of information. I'm gonna put it in writing. We were still figuring out some details and dates. I'm gonna be putting it in writing between today and tomorrow in the channel for everyone to see, and we're gonna be also uploading them to GitHub, where you're gonna be able to see the issues grouped by the release window. And then anything that is not tagged with a release window is still in the air, and it will need to be added to future releases moving forward. So I want to open the floor for feedback, questions. This process is still evolving, so this is just a first take. I wanna hear what you guys think, and then I'll probably hear more in the chat from the guys who couldn't make the call.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. I have a quick question in regards to the release windows, more specifically into the QA testing of the release windows. It sounds like, these release windows allows us to consolidate on QA testing because we'll combine all those changes within the release window, right? Before we begin QA testing. Who would be performing the QA test in that aspect? Because previously would have been just like, the people who make the PR changes could potentially pitch in. There has been in the past historically as well, the core team doing their own QA testing. Who owns the QA testing inside these?
Yeah, so for the next two release windows, it's gonna be the quality team. We're ramping up efforts on the quality team, so they're gonna be owning and certifying the releases, and then hopefully in the future, once we have the automated QA suite, whenever a PR comes in, we can work with the contributor either internally or externally to have those tests come in automated. And in that way, the only thing that the quality team will need to certify is the QA design that is going to come accompanied with the PR. Just like Allison PR'd and Andy PR'd their QA design for regression for their features in the future. What we would like to see is people also contributing those scenarios automated using the automation engine that we are putting in place in August.
Okay, got it. And I might have
So yeah,
misheard.
that relieves the contributor from having to perform the QA themselves by consolidating this into like one round of testing. One question that comes into mind is what happens if the feature breaks during QA, and that is something that we haven't fully figured out in the sense of do we just let the feature out? Do we have a bug fixing window and things like that? So for now, we're calling it, we're gonna give it a 1 week window for QA, and if things can be fixed during the QA window and those scenarios be retested, then it makes the release. If not, it will be deferred to the next release window.
Yeah, I think that was going to be one of my questions as well. Like, what if we combine these features and one of them breaks? Um, and on average, how long does the quality and storage assurance team takes to do a QA test on a specific release? How long is that, like time from start to time from end to do actual QA testing?
So we're giving it a week. It's gonna be a release window, a QA window, and then a beta deployment. Uh, if the beta fails, then we need to in the next release window fix it until it gets RC. Um, uh, but we're giving it a week because the quality team is not only doing protocol QA at this moment.
Gotcha.
So so
And
we're gonna be using that as a way to consolidate all the testing for our release into a single point in time.
let's see. And then these release windows, I'm not sure if I caught wind of it. Um, did you say how long the release windows are gonna be?
Well,
Or
the only two that we have scheduled so far are this upcoming, the one that closes next week, and the one that is gonna be mid-August. From that point on, we wanna try and do like all the release windows for an entire quarter. We still don't know yet what the best uh, um, let's say it's gonna be an ongoing process to determine how much upgrades at the too fast it constitutes. For example, not runners have complained in the past when we had shorter releases that upgrade burnout was a thing, and now we have too long releases, and then it's like, oh, we want to have faster. So we are trying to find that middle ground where um, where we are able to have enough time to complete the features, because that's one thing, and then also not create a burnout. So we're thinking, and don't quote me on these numbers, but we're thinking like, for example, doing a month, a, a monthly window for consensus breaking changes, and a biweekly window for like for example, we have 2 weeks at the middle of the month you have a minor release, and at the end of the month you have a major release kind of thing.
yeah, I was thinking the minor releases should be on a more frequent uh, basis. That would be nice, especially if we had automated testing along with it. Um,
You mean the minor
yeah,
releases?
yeah, the minor.
Yeah, we'll see, because we also, like, if we make it too fast, then we're gonna see a lot of items being deferred and deferred and deferred because they will take longer to implement, even if they are minor. If we want to keep consensus breaking changes uh, as like atomic as possible and just focus on the consensus breaking parts in order to secure the release. But I see your point. As I said, it's gonna be an evolving process. Let's see how it goes, and if we can make them shorter, we make them shorter, because at that point, if for example contributors are contributing the QA design and the automated tests, just like they would contribute unit tests, then at that point, the QA happens in whatever time it takes the automated QA suite to happen, and it will be mostly time to review the implementation and the QA design.
Sure. Let me think about this. Uh, sorry. So you mentioned that version 0.9 is going into QA testing next week. Is that what I
Yep,
heard?
yep, that's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Is there like, does that mean it's code complete already? Or is gonna be code complete by the end of this week?
It's gonna be code complete by the end of this week. Yeah.
Cool. Is there like a PR, open PR open for that right now that people
Uh,
can visit?
there isn't yet. We have the last feature that is going internally. It's PR. Well, I guess yes. The two PRs that you should be looking at are the ones that auto opened as draft, which is gonna be completed tomorrow, and then the PIP22 PR that is also gonna be completed tomorrow. What we're hoping to do is basically it's gonna be a little tight, but by having have them reviewed and approved earlier next week, and then have the quality team perform the QA towards the end of the week. And even if it's gonna be a little packed, we're gonna try and make it happen.
Gotcha. So did that mean the internal team decided to skip the 8.4 release or combine it in 2.9? Is that what happened here?
No, 8.4. What happened was the order of operation changed because of the vote on PIP22. If the vote on PIP22 didn't happen, we will have had 8.4. But because the DAO voted on the feature, then we're inversing the order, bringing 9.0 closer, and then the next minor version is going to be 9.1.
Okay, and which one has the persistent replacement changes? Was it
Persistent replacement changes is a minor release, and it's not going to be included in 9.0. It might be included in 9.1, but it's still being worked on. It might be even before longer than that.
okay? Got it. Um, okay, that makes sense. I feel like I've been asking all the questions. I'm gonna stop here. See if anyone else has some other further questions. Anyone else? If not, I do have one further question in regards of like when LeanPocket can be feasibly QA tested. Um, from the sounds of it, it looks like it's gonna be pushed to the next release window. Is there any feasible way where we could achieve it in the same release window as point 0.9 and PIP22? How
Eh,
can
oh,
we
oh,
reach
ye-
that at?
Yeah, the thing is that the team feels queasy of pushing these two big changes, one consensus breaking and whatnot, and at the same time, especially because of the nature of how 9.0 is coming to be. 9.0 was supposed to be a release with no new functionality, only the tender mempool changes in August, right? Like we're pushing the date in order to be able to be compliant with the DAO and the vote. And uh, we think that if we were to put the two releases together, we will be introducing a lot of complexity that could be putting both releases at risk. So what we think, even if, let's say, for example, one option could be, you guys perform your own regression suite in parallel with the quality team. When we merge the two together, it's not like 1 + 1 makes 2, right? Like now we need to see how everything interacts with each other. And even though it doesn't, from an architectural standpoint, these two features are not connected. Just the fact of the matter is that now, like unfortunately, our one of the problems that we have here is that our current development process it doesn't isn't able to take out a feature and turn it off completely or remove the entirety of the code without going through an entire um, process. So what we think will be best is if we were able to give LeanPocket the time it deserves. And think about it this way: we're also more worried about LeanPocket's QA because of the complexity of the scenarios. Just when I went over Addison's uh, uh, tests, and I also consulted with our quality team. They were more concerned about the complexity of LeanPocket in terms of testing than the complexity of PIP22 or the new mempool Tendermint mempool changes. So I feel like, well, no, not me. It's not an I decision. We felt like decoupling both releases was the best way to achieve security and stability.
See, I think it does make sense to couple the releases.
And, uh,
I,
and again, we're trying to open a release window right after the beta is tagged for 9.0, meaning if we are able to successfully tag 9.0 by the 1st of August, we're hoping to open a new release window by the 12th of August, meaning the other week. Sorry, by the week of the 8th to the 12th, in order to perform QA, so we could have a 9.1 maybe tag in the week of the 15th to the 19th. So it's not like we're trying to delay things too much. We wish we could put it all out together at the same time, but we feel this is the best way to do so in a safe manner.
okay, and I haven't really had a chance to um, read the comments you mentioned in terms of the complexity of the QA test that Edison puts up. But correct me if I'm wrong or not. I did get a chance to read, the other scenarios. Um, this doesn't sound like something that should be stalled for multiple days in terms of coming up with the right scenarios that would break down LeanPocket into something feasible for QA testing, maybe 1 or 2 days max. Um, am I wrong in that? I hear the word complexity, and I get a little bit concerned that it sounds like that we'll have to spend a significant time on working out those QA testing. Um, but
I
right,
responded to Addison 3 days ago, hoping to have
right,
the same kind of process that I had with you, where we jumped in calls, I explained you things, you made changes. So I'm basically waiting on him uh, to to get the scenarios
gotcha,
ready to go. Which is what
gotcha.
I'm doing with Andy, like actively
Yeah,
working with him to get his scenarios up to par for next week's QA process.
yeah, just bad timing 'cause there's actually a crypto conference going on right now. Some of your folks are over there as well. So I'm sure he'll get back to you soon enough. I'll shoot him a reminder so that way we can get those QA tests and scenarios worked out.
I think one thing that I actually consider is that LeanPocket it's actually code complete based on the back and forth that we had. Unless you keep adding features,
Didn't add any
you
features. So
yeah. So that review process already went down. So if you're gonna add any features, then we just have to review those again, and then we go ahead and close that part of it. So it's only the QA design
gotcha.
that's gonna be left.
So now that it's code complete, I want to ask one further question. How do you feel about open source and LeanPocket at this code complete stage?
You mean opening up PR against the public repo?
Yeah. Right now it's in a private repository. I'm not saying we should open source it. I just want to see how you feel about it. I don't know how the other
I, I, wa-
contributors of
I,
LeanPocket.
I I actually was gonna suggest that. I was gonna suggest that we open source the because the review happened on a closed source fashion.
Yeah,
Uh, well, I was thinking that maybe we could create the PR, specify to people, hey, here's it's code complete, but still hasn't gone through QA. It's still not yet safe to deploy, but at least we get the eyes of the community on it. And if someone else has any more questions or comments about it, they can be asked in open. And we can also, I've
I
been
like.
keeping track of all the back and forth in the PR that I reviewed in your repo. So we can also link to that so we can have already the public evidence going on.
Yeah, I like the idea of that as well. I like to think that I'm not the only one who has thoughts about LeanPocket that can contribute to
Yeah,
it. And
I
we saw so
I
many. Mhm.
I gave you my personal opinion, but I cannot make the decision in a vacuum. So what I'm gonna do is basically go back to the team and be like, hey, here's my reasoning, and then if we get a positive response, then I'll tell you to open up the create the PR, and then we can
So,
get the
so,
process one step closer to completion.
so I'll throw a second point too on why I think it should start to push towards open sourceness. Is that
Mhm.
it's more due to perhaps, like for example, Thunderhead right now has access to the Lean client, um, and we've been doing all that in a private repository, and
Mhm.
technically because of these new release windows, LeanPocket is like delayed in a sense. It's pushed back, so PIP 22 and version 0.9 is going to come first, and some people may be coming asking us like, okay, why does Thunderhead only get to use LeanPocket, for example? So that's another reason why I would like to push it up if like any other node runner wants to, I guess, test it out or
That
contribute, and
Yeah,
they
and those comms need to go out
right,
in a way that says if you're gonna use this, it's under your own risk,
100%.
uh, and we still get done
Yeah,
fully supported because it hasn't gone through the QA process yet.
right. I think we follow the same messaging that Better did in a sense, where it hasn't been QA tested and it shouldn't be used um,
Wide
on a
scale.
production setting because it hasn't been
Mm,
QA tested. But at least it keeps things, I guess, in a transparent. And that's what we want to do, in my opinion.
yeah,
Especially with open source and this, we want to keep things transparent. So if I would really just let me know inside the or dev chat about how the internal team feels about it, and then we'll recircle back on that aspect.
yeah, I will do.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you, Pocket Blade, for all your insights. Anyone else have any other questions regarding process, QA, release windows?
Oh, just another point. In terms of LeanPocket, I had I had some folks reach out on like, I guess this is another point to strengthen. Like, let's shoot for open sourceness. I had some people reach out on like, hey, can I use LeanPocket to help create some documentation, and help contribute as well? And I was like, I'm not sure. Let me get back to you on that and double touch with the core team. Um,
That's
so
a good point. Yeah,
yeah,
that is a good point.
so, the sooner we get it open, the more the community gets their hands on it, gets to toy around with it, um, and actually get to play with functionality. So that way we have the documentation um, for a wide release.
Yeah, awesome. That's a good point. Yeah. Um, cool. So those are all the topics in the agenda. We still have 30 minutes to go. Well, 20 minutes to go. Are there any other questions or comments regarding B0 that anyone would like to bring up?
I don't think we had to address it in this call, but um, did you get the sorry, the GitHub issue on the evidence problem that we
Oh
spoke
yeah, I
about
saw
briefly?
I saw that. Yeah, I haven't seen the test yet, but I saw that you posted the issue. Yeah,
Cool. Sounds good. Just want to make sure it's on
awesome.
your radar.
Thank you. I give a couple minutes if anyone has any other questions or comments uh, to address regarding V0 development contribution, question about proposals.
Yeah, I got a quick question. From what it sounds like, the QA for PIP22 is going to be prioritized over LeanPocket, and my question was, is there a reason PIP22 is being QA'd first over the Lean the Lean client? Because at least I know with node runners, there's just tons of discussion on trying to figure out, how much consolidation they need to start trying to prepare for, um, and and yet, like the Lean client, if that was QA'd first and prioritized first, uh, a lot of people wouldn't have to try to figure out the PIP22, that kind of stuff yet. So I was just curious if there was any specific reason that one would be kind of focused on or prioritized in terms of order over the other.
Yeah, and the first thing that I want to address is that the shift in order is like a couple weeks. It's not like we're deferring it to the next year or whatever. Just want to get that really clear out there. The two reasons are that we feel PIP22 is a smaller release in terms of how much impact it has on the application at the software level. And we also feel like the QA complexity is simpler because we already had several other scenarios around rewarding and things like that. So it's gonna be easier for us to determine the quality of it, right? And the second factor is that PIP22 has a secondary component that is gonna delay it even further. Like PIP22 is gonna go live with the default values. So it will even after the governance upgrade goes up, it will take another governance upgrade that is being discussed in the forums right now to update all the parameters that have to do with PIP22's deployment. So it actually PIP22 will see the effects later than potentially LeanPocket, because once LeanPocket is released, everyone will be able to just upgrade and change their deployments to it, right? So and to Pocket Blade's point around open sourceness, this will get us a a way to show node runners how the feature is going to look like before it goes live, so people can start planning their changes appropriately. So we believe that even by doing this, we're basically not delaying PIP22's effect further and at the expense of a couple weeks more waiting for the LeanPocket official release. So if you weigh these things in the balance, it will seem like we will have all the positive effects that all these releases bring, uh, barring that there aren't any issues found with either. Um, Sooner if we go in this order of operations rather than in the opposite.
Uh, that just raised another question I just thought of. See how much time we have here. Um, so I saw the PR for PIP22. The changes doesn't look that significant, but I'm actually not too familiar with uh, version 0.9 and the changes that come along with that. Um, you probably have a good idea in that aspect. I did take a chance to look at like what was initially supposed to be the persistent replacement, and there was a lot of changes that would probably cause a lot of merge conflicts with LeanPocket. But in terms of like version 0.9, thinking
Per,
about that, how many like
per,
yeah, go ahead.
Persistence replacement doesn't touch LeanPocket because the only database that is being effectively changed is the state database. Because LeanPocket doesn't write to the state directly, but to other databases, you shouldn't see any impact in that regard.
Okay,
And
what
again,
about version 0.9?
persistence.
Yeah.
So version 0.9 is going to have only two changes. It's going to have a new param that is going to be set to the same value that is set today in the state, but will allow the DAO to have another parameter to um, for governance, and that parameter is going to be around block size. If in the future we want to change the block size of the network, the DAO will now have a tool to do it. This is something that was planned initially to start development again in the August, and what was going to be an August release, but because 9.0, we inverted the order of operations, it's going to come in. And then the second change, it's actually on the Tendermint fork, and it's mempool refinements to the Tendermint fork that are being worked on. I think the PR was already closed actually. I'll link the PR to you. But basically, what this does is basically protect us better from the mempool perspective in terms of when there are too many transactions in the mempool and things like that, how all of that gets managed by the software. We're basically patching Tendermint to allow for our use case in a better way. Those are the only three, and PIP22. Those are the only three things making it into 9.0.
Okay, doesn't look like there's going to be any conflicts really with LeanPocket. Then, if I were to like rebase it, for the
No,
most part, it should be pretty seamless. I mean,
exactly.
because if I have to do it, it means more work for me,
No,
right? So, right,
yes,
that's fine. Yeah.
exactly. You and I are on the same page because it's more work for you, more work for me as well. That's one thing that I took into consideration. Rebasing into these changes shouldn't have any effect, any major effect on LeanPocket, and if it does, I'm here to help you and guide you to resolve them as fast as possible.
Gotcha. I was actually not aware of the block size change parameter, so it looks like I want to understand the motivation behind this because I do know that we were bounded by the number of validators due to this block size limit. So it sounds like this allows the DAO to have more flexibility with changing the block size, so that way we can have more validators in the network. Is that of course
Motivation
with
comes from the motivation comes from this was something on Tendermint that we didn't like, and it's the fact that in a Cosmos network, if you want to change block size, you have to regenesis
okay,
because the block size is a parameter that it's determined at genesis. It's a consensus param, as they call it, not a module param, like the parameters that we use to govern the network. So we basically always wanted to bridge that gap, and in light of several developments that look like we might want that tool to scale the network further, we decided to include the parameter as a module param, so we can govern the consensus param that way.
gotcha. But if we do increase the max block size, does that mean we could fit more validators into our network? Of course, like there's pros and cons to this, but does that
That's the idea, yeah. Like we should be able to fit more transactions and more validators. But
okay,
remember that
right?
this comes at a cost because every transaction additional, it's more resource management to process the blocks at pace, resource management to not increase RAM or CPU requirements because now you're processing X amount more of transactions and so on and so forth.
Right. That totally makes sense. Of course, with more transactions and more, I guess, P2P gossip between
Yep.
validators. It is like pros and cons, but what I'm thinking initially is that uh, due to the impacts of consolidation thanks to PIP 22 and as well potentially LeanPocket, that gives us a lot of wiggle room. And then as well with the persistence replacement changes and potentially reducing, having those different types of blockchain data on user
Mhm,
data for servicing.
mhm.
I guess that in a way gives us wiggle room, right, to play around with these numbers from a governance perspective to increase our validated security. Am I
Oh,
understand that correctly?
correct. Yeah. And also to be able to scale even the number of nodes in the network.
Yeah,
Because now, yeah, you said it right. Consolidation is going to bring the total number of servicers down. But if tomorrow we were to do 10 times the traffic, we might see an increase in service nodes, just like we saw when that happened earlier this year. So I think that this is basically preparing the ground, arming the DAO with as many tools as possible to be able to handle all the potential scenarios in the future.
that's super neat. I really like this change. Um, Changing the block size, have flexibility on that without having to regenesis. There's a specific chain that did a lot of regenesis at its early stages called we actually onboarded them recently. It's called, I believe, Optimism. Um,
Mhm.
and they regenesis like 3 or 4 times in the early stage. And because of that, the developers who were trying to query the blockchain for history and data couldn't get the information. They hated
They
it.
they can't. They
Right.
can't. That's why we don't want a regenesis ever, and we built this entire upgrade system so we could have access to all the data permanently through time.
Super neat. I'd love to see some projections on like what blockchain or what our chain data would look like in terms of size. If, for example, we were to increase this number, so that way the DAO can have a better visualization of like, oh, if we were to increase block size by an additional megabyte, right? What impacts does that have to
We
um,
actually have a project internally that is going to be happening later in the quarter or maybe next quarter where we're going to transparent ties. I don't know if that's a word actually, but make more transparent to the DAO and the community. What are the impacts of adding more data from size, the state size, number of transactions in blocks, and resource consumption, things like that. Call it like a benchmarking of the a state or blockchain side benchmarking that is more comprehensive. That the blockchain is growing at whatever pace. It's more like, hey, every additional transaction or piece of data that we add to the state adds this much load to each node maintaining the chain. And so if we end up having more validators, imagine that if those validators have to have higher power requirements, will it be sensible to run validators at all? And so these are all questions that you have to put in the balance when thinking about these things as well.
tool looks that tool whenever it's released sounds extremely helpful for us to create those decisions. And particularly the one that comes into reminder is PUB 14, the one to increase max validators. I felt like
Mhm.
there was some unknown side effects, so to speak, of increasing the validators that we just didn't
They,
know too
they
much
were
about.
they were not unknown though. The formula is clear,
Right.
and we've published it several times. It's just that at the time of the review, and this was my fault. At the time of the review, I failed to account for how much space left in the average block there will be uh, at the end of the change for new transactions to come in. And this again comes to play into the whole dynamic block size
Yeah.
because now you are able to see these things and adjust to them if necessary, right? Understanding the trade-off, but being able to adjust to them in the first place.
Got it. Stop asking questions.
Well, I mean, we took the whole hour. Shane,
Sorry.
does that answer your question? You didn't get a chance to say that. The whole question about the order of operations.
Yeah, it answers my question. I don't think it's yeah, I suspect pip22, I don't know, having the light client and pip22 coming out exactly at the same time is I think a little bit confusing on comms. And especially since we're not even sure what the pip22 parameters are going to be, and there's still discussion around that. So yeah, but I get that pip22 is easier to it's easier to QA, and so that's why it was given priority. But yeah, I think the timeline is a little confusing for node runners, because consolidation is just the important thing, regardless of how it comes. So, but yeah, I appreciate the answer though.
Yep. Cool, guys. So 5 minutes left. I want to thank everyone who came. If there are any closing questions or comments, I guess the to-do item for me is uh, publish the dates in writing for the two windows, the major window that we're gonna have soon, and the upcoming minor window that we're gonna have later in August, and then and also get back to you, Pocket Blade, about open sourcing the LeanPocket implementation via PR, um, and so we can start leveraging other aspects that will be necessary for the for the release as well. Not any more questions? I think we can wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.